Welcome to the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature top founders and entrepreneurs and share their inspiring stories. Now, let's get started with the show.
Matthew Connor here, host of the Cyber Business Podcast, where we feature successful business leaders, top law firms, green energy companies, and more. Today, we're joined by a master of his craft, a man who's been building beautiful custom homes for over 13 years, the founder of Cab and John Builders, Joshua Rosenthal. Josh, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, Matt. Super excited to be here with you.
Well, thanks. Well, before we get into it, a quick word from our sponsors. This episode is brought to you by cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. Cyberlinks is a complete technology solution provider that ensures your business not only has the most reliable and professional IT service, but also has the right cybersecurity solutions to ensure your business stays productive and safe. Many businesses think that they're too small to be a target for cyber criminals, and that's simply not the case. We've had many companies come to us needing help after they've been hit, and they're always surprised because they thought they were too small to be a target. And they also think that they can't afford it, which is also not the case. It's surprisingly inexpensive, and if you think you're too small or can't afford proper cybersecurity, check out our website, cyberlinks.com. That's cyberlynx.com. And you'll be surprised to find out just how affordable proper protection really is. And now back to our show. Josh, thanks for coming on the show today.
My pleasure. Very happy to be here.
All right. So why don't you tell us how you got started in the custom home building business?
Okay. So technically, I'm second generation in the custom home building business, though, like many stories with your family, it's not, a direct route. My parents, I think the most interesting part of this, including my mother, were custom builders for over 30 years. She was one of the first people to work on detailed selections back in the 80s when people didn't want to let you do your own thing in your house. And about the time I was in middle school, they started their own business. Somewhere along high school, my dad sat me down and said, "So, Mom and I have this business going. We're figuring out how to grow it. Is this something you think would be part of your future? It'll help us understand what we're doing." In classic, smarter than everybody high school fashion, I think my answer to my father was, "I don't think I'll be a builder, but if by some chance I am, it certainly wouldn't be with you all."
Oh, so, crap.
Very full of myself, high school. I've got these other grand plans. Ended up going to college, going into a completely different industry where I had some success and was getting to a little bit of a crossroads. This was about the time that I was about 20 plus years ago. About the time I was getting ready to get married, thinking about my future, had always been entrepreneurial in nature, had started a charity in high school, a business in college, and started thinking, I want to do this, I want to do something for myself. And I started going through all these options of what I would be doing, how I would be doing it, probably spent 6 months. And one night said to my wife, "You're not going to believe this, but I think I want to be a builder. And I think I might even want to do it with my family." She looked me dead in the eye and said, "God, you finally said that. I've been waiting for this to come out, but I knew if I brought it up, it would be a nothing." So at the time, my brother had actually started working with my parents straight out of school, and he's my current business partner. So I went and I actually talked to him first because that would have been sort of the futuring of the company. Long story short, we all decided to work together, which we did for maybe 6 or so years. And then when the 2008-9 downturn happened, my father is a many-decade veteran of this industry, sort of said, "Okay, I've had my ups and downs and ups and downs, and I don't want to go on this roller coaster anymore. It's time for us to move on and retire." And my brother and I sort of sat down, thought about what we wanted to do, and decided that we actually wanted to start our own company with new branding, new everything, for a number of reasons. Part as a new beginning, be able to start really lean in an economic downturn, which turned out to be a great learning experience and opportunity to really grow a company properly. but also we wanted to be a little bit more technology reliant, a little different approach to customer service, a little bit of a different approach to how our job sites were managed. And we felt the best genesis for that was in a new company, and that was Cabin John Builders.
Ah, nice. Well, of course, we appreciate technology here, and so tell us a little bit about that. What kind of technology do you use to kind of stay above the fray, if you will?
Okay. So, and part of the story, as you may know from your experience, is the construction industry is inherently change and technology resistant.
Yeah.
So it's probably a decade or two behind other industries. And as recently as maybe 15 years ago, we're building these complex homes where you're picking out hundreds and hundreds of different unique finishes that go into them. And that process was managed by a set of three-ring notebooks,
No.
one in the office, one on the job site, and one that belonged to the customer. And there was like a weekly meeting where we'd actually have to swap pages in and out to update and it just didn't make sense. It was required
Yeah.
because we've got all this information to keep track of, but there wasn't a good solution. So one of the things that we started with, I think very early, if not at the very beginning of our company, and we still partner with a company called Builder Trend, who is a software as service, production management software. They've grown over the years to have accounting modules and other things. But when it sort of started, it was how do you organize your selections? How do you organize your schedule? How do you organize your basic job paperwork and communicate to a client in an online manner?
Yeah.
And so that really became the core of what we started doing, because also recognizing we work on some very high end and luxury homes. The majority of our clients are extremely busy, most often two working adults in the family, and they're not necessarily engaged and able to look at something at 10 o'clock on a Tuesday because that's when works with our business schedule. So
Yeah.
then also opening their world up to 24/7 access to go, hey, wait, which fridge were we going to pick out? Or let's look at that change order. Now you can do that at 1 a.m. from your hotel room in San Francisco on a business trip instead of in our offices or on your job site weekly. So that was sort of the foundation that we wanted to take forward and move with that. And it also allowed us to have a more open book and sort of cost plus approach to our services, which we think is the best way to go.
That's fantastic. Yeah, no, you're right. That has not been my experience with builders. For them to be so technologically forward, at least 10 to 20 years. In the past, for sure. I think sometimes 30 to 40 years in the past. And it's like, really? And you ask any sort of new thing, and it's just, now this is how we do it. We've always done it. Okay. So no, that's good for you.
Yeah, no, it's a real challenge in the industry, and in part because there is this underlying, let's say, when it comes to waterproofing details of your home,
Mm.
you don't want your builder necessarily to be an innovator or for you to be the guinea pig more specifically. So
Good
there
point.
is this ingrained, if it works, don't break it
Hmm.
in building, which makes sense for the technical side of the industry, but it doesn't for the operation. So that really was where we said, let's think about this differently. Let's work on our operations. Um, let's see how we can push this.
I love it because, I mean, heck, we've all become so accustomed to that with everything we do now. I mean, from Amazon and, just being able to select what you want, have it delivered so fast. You work with somebody online, you expect there to be some sort of portal where it's all your information's there. And you typically do not get that with a home builder. That's for sure. So very
No, you
cool.
don't.
All right. Well, let me ask you, what advice would you give to somebody looking to buy a home, build a home? Um, you know, I guess first, buying versus building. What's the advantages, disadvantages?
Well, so I think there are some major advantages to a new home. Obviously, you have, especially a custom home, you've got control over making sure that that home fits you directly. And part of that is a cost and space thing, but also part of that is design and how you choose to live in the home. So if you're raising school age children, as an example, if you're designing and building your own home, you can make decisions like, Would we like our children doing their homework and using their computers in their room or out in an open space? And you can make that values-based family decision and then allow your home to accommodate that. Do you make the kids' bedrooms a little bit bigger because they're almost like mini apartments and they do their homework in there and they entertain a friend, and that's sort of the independent style in which you'd like to raise your children? Or do you want that to be a smaller sleeping room where it really is just a bedroom and their personal things, and there's a shared open space for homework? The family congregates in a basement or a family room or a den. And so all these little things that are not necessarily cost related create an influence in your home and how you live it. What are the paths going to be in? Who does the grocery shopping? Who does the cooking? Is that communal? Is that individual? And all of those factors come into laying out a custom home. So I think that's really one of the premier advantages to custom home. Then you get into this factor of, with a new home in general, everything has a born on date that's about the same. So you've got a much longer time period until you have maintenance. You have all these warranties running concurrently. And in addition to getting what you want, you get to just sort of live in your home. Buying an older home, there often is maintenance, or how do we improve this, or should we address this? And obviously, we do a lot of renovation work, and I'm not going to say that's a bad thing, but it is a different experience and a different sort of exploration into your home each way.
Absolutely. Okay. All right. How about, advice you'd give people? How do how should they go about finding, and shopping for let's say they decide, I want to custom build my house. Cause I love that whole approach you just took of, look, you want to have it, your kids, do you want them in their rooms? You want them studying? That's brilliant. So let's say you decide, yeah, that makes a lot of sense for us. We want to build our own. What advice you give them on how to find the right home builder? How do you do that?
Obviously, it's a complicated issue, especially because our industry has a bad reputation to move past. So early along, there was a lot of mistrust of contractors. This question of, is this guy going to leave my site? Am I getting ripped off? These are tropes that surround our industry, and some of them, frankly, were well earned. So you have this automatically sort of tension filled, am I getting a good deal? Am I picking the right person? Are they really reliable going into the process? And I think the biggest piece of advice I have for people is both to be open to what the industry has to offer and also to use the skills that you already have. I see a lot of people who try and out architect or out builder the builder in selection, going, oh, well, I know we need to put this in, or I know we need to do it this way. I am probably a better professional builder than the average client who comes to us. That being said, all of my clients have made major life decisions with their partners. They've hired key professionals in their life, lawyers, doctors, financial, who handle issues of safety, massive amounts of money. They have a track record understanding, do I work best with a large company, a small company, direct contact to an owner, a large chain of supervision? What are the environments where I feel the most comfortable, where I feel my money is being handled properly? And I think if people would spend more time shopping in that manner, thinking about what serves them best, who they want to work with in terms of type of an organization, type of a process, that really is the top level piece of advice. Then we obviously get into some of those littler things in terms of being penny wise and pound foolish. And, when you get into these tempting situations of, I've looked at multiple prices and two of them are up here and one of them is way down here, and your mind says one thing, your heart says another, that gets really complicated. And that's where I sort of rely back on, like, use those skills you have. Don't sit here and try and dissect, like, which guy's using a better plywood, or maybe this is the best deal. Use the skills you've honed, use the intelligence you have to help guide you through that process.
And would you say you tend to get what you pay for in home building, or it really just kind of, covers the whole gambit? You might get a great home builder who's really inexpensive, or no, if you're going to get great, you're going to pay for great. How does that work, would you say in home building?
I think you get what you pay for, though I will sort of break that up a little bit because there are two areas to look at. Number one is what actually goes into the construction, where you certainly are going to get what you pay for. And the other is the builder themselves and the type and style and size of the business. There are some very large companies that are extremely successful that I would let build my home. I consider them colleagues and friends. They charge a larger overhead and profit than I do because I've got less than a dozen people on my team. They've got 40 plus. They're routinely working with a higher level of insurance, higher level, and that's why. Likewise, there's some true sole proprietor, smart builder in a truck who can execute a project who've got less of an overhead and profit than I do. So I think that is one way to understand and affect what you're doing. But then I think, especially living in an area as populated and as construction heavy as the Metro DC area, the markets have weeded things out. There aren't a lot of unbelievable electricians at bargain basement prices because they have figured it out. And likewise, there aren't people who are just ripping, a good electrician who's just ripping everybody off and making 50% profit. Because again, the market won't allow that because there are thousands of projects going on a daily basis in our area. So that would sort of be my other advice is the market has done a lot of the work for the consumer.
No, I mean, I think that's really interesting. You don't often hear that. I hear it all the time when it comes to restaurants, and so we live in the same town here, and honestly, a restaurant if it survives long in Bethesda, it's a pretty good restaurant. I mean, you get plenty that come in and then they go, and you're like, oh, I guess it wasn't very good. The ones that stick around are actually pretty good. So it's kind of cool to hear that the same kind of deal. The market is kind of having its way with the pieces that shouldn't be there, kind of gets rid of them. That's I hadn't heard about builders, but you're right. You do often hear that whole, you hear horror stories about builders who took people for a ride or whatever it was. I mean, we had a crazy builder for ours. I mean, he was nuts. I mean, he's in jail now, and rightfully so. But I mean, that guy, we were lucky, but he was just drunk all the time, high all the time. It was like, seriously, if it was after 5 o'clock, don't answer the phone because the guy's either drunk or high. And it was a miracle that the house got finished at all. And the ones after us did not. So it was,
it can be a huge challenge. And I think that's also, a little bit of why you get into building a house and running a construction company are not the same skill. So you may have been lucky with someone who was very good at the technical aspects of completing a house, and you were able to push through the process to get the home you wanted completed. But it was miserable because they don't know how to run a business and to interact with you well. So I think that's the other thing is really understanding who you're in this relationship with. You will talk to your builder, if you're building a custom home, more than you talk to your spouse for the next year.
Yeah.
So there is a lot of, do we want to work with these people? And at the end of the day, it comes down to, do we trust them? Because you're going to get all sorts of information, critical information. Spend 10 grand extra on this, save some money here. This isn't required. This is important for safety. And if you can't go into that complex conversation with a level of trust of, I'm getting given the right information to then be able to make my decision, you're going to be in for a very unpleasant ride.
No, that isn't that true. I mean, it really is. And our guy, he was not only not good at running a business, he was not a nice person. I mean, he just wasn't good to talk to. But it was such a it was such a good deal. But again, you get what you pay for. So
Yep.
and that unfortunately happened to the people after us. They weren't able to kind of manage that very difficult relationship to the finish line. And he was he was a bit of a monster. Honestly, it was crazy.
I'm so sorry to hear about that. And that honestly is part of what we have to fight as reputable builders is these people exist. I'm sure you end up with a beautiful home despite all the effort you had to put into it and the anxiety and the work. And that's a real story in our market of somebody who is out there was out there
That's exactly.
selling homes.
Yep. The market
And
fortunately took care of him.
right, and the market took care of him, but that is what we're, working against or
Sadly.
working with in our industry.
Yeah. And well, I mean, so how does that work? It's not like you go and obviously you get licenses, right? You've got to
Yeah.
have what a contractor's license, insurance, things like that, right? But there's no, so it makes you wonder how, you can keep getting these people in there. But then they get cleaned out. Like you said, if you don't create a good product or service at some point, word gets around, people stop doing it. It's not like you've got
Right.
no way of knowing. So they may have perfectly good intentions going into it, but then just lack the ability to do the business side, lack the whatever it is. Um, Interesting. Okay. So, so let me ask you, what are some of those mistakes besides, hiring a contractor like we did? What are some of those typical mistakes that people should kind of learn from or try to avoid? What would you say?
Uh, I think one of the things, and this is really for comfort and enjoyment more than anything, is to be honest with yourself about your budget and your expectations. So we have had many clients we've worked with who say, no, no, this is my budget, or this is what I want, or maybe even take a set of plans and reduce it and value engineer it down to a number they're comfortable with, only to spend in the end what they said they weren't going to. Because instead of making that one painful decision, they make it 15 times over by taking everything out and then adding them in bit by bit. And this isn't to say that you have to spend all the money in the world, but it is to say if you're really going to spend $1.5 million, don't try and fool yourself and everybody else into thinking you're going to do it for 1.25. Spend all this energy sort of unraveling the project to then spend the time and energy to get, you're going to have a bumpier road and a longer timeline to get to the same exact point where you started.
Yeah.
Um, and again, that's not necessarily about coming and telling me, hey, I've got all this money, this is what you need to do, but understanding realistically what it's going to take and how you're prepared to do that.
Yeah. Well, and then do you think that is that based off of, say, you do a little searching in the area and you're like, oh, homes that I like sell for 1.5, right? And like the homes about the right size, the right. Is that basically how you come to that number when it comes to building as well, or when it comes to building your custom home, do you need to expect to pay more because well, it's there's the building costs. How's that work?
Um, so it's a little bit of both. So part of it is understanding what kind of investment you're looking to make in this property. And so especially when you get into a custom home, what things are you doing that are just for yourself? So as an example, you're a business owner, you've got a podcast. If you decided, you know what, I'm going to build an office for my business as part of my house, and I want to have a dedicated podcast studio, and I want to be able to accommodate 3 key employees, 4 key, whatever it may be. And this is actually something we've done, which is why I'm using this as an
Oh,
example
nice.
for someone, is that's not part of the like, a house goes for this on my street. That is something you're doing for yourself. It very well may be a great investment, maybe a good investment for your business. So you're sort of looking at what is it that I want to do that sort of fits in. And then now that I'm going down this custom road, am I going up or down from that point? Am I saying, hey, I want to be on the street, but it's a street full of 6,000 square foot, 5, 6 bedroom houses? That's not what my family needs. We're a 3,200 square foot, 3 bedroom, simple lifestyle, but we want to be here. Now you're taking that number and sort of adjusting down. Or if you're building out your dream, or, it's very interesting. One thing I say to clients often when we're meeting is, what is this house to you? Because for some people, it is an investment. For some people, it's an art project or sort of a personal statement of style. For other people, it's a place to live between 2023 and 2027. And those are not the same thing. You don't have the same approach, and you very well may not have the same budget. So often it's getting back, understanding what is this for me? What is my investment to that? Does that leave me in either a sensible place in the market around me or a place I am comfortable with in terms of the market around me? And then you sort of build from there forward.
I would imagine it's got to be really tricky and honestly difficult on the builder's side to say, oh, we want to build this home because and somebody comes to you and they say, hey, I want to build a home like this. I mean, great. Maybe they already have the drawings. Do you get that a lot? They come with the architect drawings already done, or they're like, hey, I want to build a cool house. How much is that going to cost? I mean, do you get both?
We get both of those
spectrum?
fairly common, but often, even if we get plans, they're in the early stages because they want to understand, what does this house look like and what does it cost before spending tens of thousands of dollars on the final engineering, the final plans for permit. And that's a reasonable time. And I think the right time to be bringing a building professional into your project if you don't have one yet, because okay, now we've got a good, if we go with the school analogy, we've got a really good outline for our term paper or a really good rough draft. And that's the time to bring all the parties to the table, figure out what we're really doing, whether it meets your family's value. So we're basically at that point trying to take a bunch of different information. There's a little bit of technical information. We've got some historical data on what things are cost. We have an exploratory conversation to sort of guess where these people are going to end up because finish items matter. I mean, not being 100% serious, the same size kitchen, roughly, we've done with $25,000 worth of cabinetry and $180,000 worth of cabinetry.
Wow.
So obviously it's important for us to ask questions that will tease out that information because very few people come walking in going, I got to have that German cabinetry where you fly in the certified installer and it's, thousands of dollars per box. Very few people are coming to the table saying that, but that may be their taste, that may be their intent, that may be what the architect's thinking. So we're trying to pull that out. And we do look at, and I say this to people often, we have less control over the pricing than people think. So much of it is based on the regulation, the materials, what physically goes into the house. Sure, we have a fee and we disclose that. We're open to discuss that. That's only one part of it. It really is a combination of the builder, the architect, the homeowner, if they have landscape and lighting designers, them included as well, sort of figure out what is the realistic budget to accomplish the goals of the group. And I think that really leads to the most successful projects as opposed to, this is what I want, someone tell me how much it costs, as independent exercise, which again is how a lot of things started in this industry. And that is better as teamwork than an independent exercise. I'm sure it's very similar to your business where you have a good meeting, you get some collaboration, you figure out what needs you're able to address. You're going to knock it out of the park as opposed to, hey, tell me what it costs.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Every time. Like when it's just about the money, then they don't understand, the product or the service, in this particular case, the home, then how it's not going to work. You can't tell somebody, oh, it's going to cost 1.5 million. There's a million things that go into that. Right. And so I would imagine that's got to be really, I guess half art, half science, right? At the end of the day, you're making a best guesstimate based off of years of experience, knowing where how much products are starting to cost and, are prices going up? Are they going down in terms of, whatever lumber, tile, concrete, everything, right? I mean, so that's a tough one. I mean,
yeah, it is. And it's certainly, often we're seeing that first round of like, hey, what's this concept house going to cost? That may be a year to 2 years before the stove is put into the house. So we are sort of having to project where the market's going. And at the same time, we have to be pretty good at it and have an understanding because it is a very reasonable question from a homeowner to be like, this is what you do all day. What is your what does it cost? Like that's not an unfair question and expectation.
Yeah.
And we go against there's this concept of like square foot pricing that a lot of people use. Like, what's your product cost per square foot?
Right.
I personally am not a big fan of that because I think it's a bad estimate of a bad estimate. And what I mean by that is if you get a beautiful wolf range put into your kitchen that's $10,000, your square foot cost under that stove is thousands of dollars per square foot. The back of your kid's closet is probably like $91 a square foot. So what matters is what's going into the home, not the side. And you get sort of these people going, oh, 300 a foot, 600 a foot, 1200. What's going into those feet? How are you using your space? What are your site conditions? Those are the real things that matter to get a true price. And I think often people are going into this going, it's going to be, I've heard out there $350 a square foot to build a custom home. I'll design this thing. With that in mind, go out and bid it, and then it's $400,000 over what they were expecting to spend, and everybody goes, what do I do now?
Back to the drawing board.
Right, back to the drawing board. Or do we have the capital to make this happen, but it doesn't match with what we thought our investment in our neighborhood was? And that's obviously a scary and difficult place, and you're already tens of thousands of dollars down the line with your architect. So it creates a stress and a problem.
Yeah, that's makes perfect sense. Well, let me ask you. So we often like to wrap things up by asking people if they have a mentor or somebody who is really influential to them in their in their particular field. Care to share?
Yeah, so I probably have a pretty long list, which starts obviously with our parents. They were custom builders, a little bit of pioneers in the industry, and well, both of them had a tremendous influence on us and taught us a lot. In some ways, my mom was almost a bigger influence to us in the terms she was a little bit of a trailblazer. She did an amazing job of balancing being a parent as well as being a professional builder. And that's where I learned is maybe not the best word, but I remember, she'd be at her desk some mornings at 5:30 because she wanted to be at my brother's soccer game at 3 in the afternoon, and learning that sort of balance as a parent, as a business owner, but still being accountable to your clients. A lot of it was sort of learned through that experience of watching them. And obviously there's tons of technical information that we learned from our dad along the way, and truly how to build a house. And then I'd say the other part is I'm very blessed to be part of a program called the Builder 20, which is run through the National Association of Home Builders, where they get 20 non-competitive builders from across the country. And we actually are lucky enough to have someone from Australia in our group. And we sort of serve as an external board of directors. We get together a couple times a year. We really dig deep into each other's businesses, into the finances. And I've got a couple of fantastic colleagues and mentors there. Specifically, there's a gentleman named Ralph Cataldo out of basically builds in Cape Cod, Massachusetts. Honored to say one of the best builders in America, fantastic businessman, built a tremendous operation and delivered on time and great customer service over the years. So to have people like him as a sounding board, as an outside person, he's never going to build in our market. I'm not building vacation homes in Cape Cod, to really chop it up and learn from and grow with. It's been one of the best business experiences and growth experiences in my life.
That's great. Can you tell folks where they can find out more about you and your business?
Sure. So I guess the easiest one is cabinjohnbuilders.com, which is our website. We also have all the various social medias available at CJB Online. And by any means, if you want to talk to me directly, you can just reach out. Email's generally best. Josh, Josh, at cabinjohnbuilders.com. And we try and keep it all simple.
Perfect. Well, we'll put links to that below the video or the sides, wherever it ends up being, but almost always below. And Josh, thanks again for coming on. It was a pleasure having you on today.
So much fun to chat with you. Thank you so much for having me.
You got it.
Thanks for listening to the Cyber Business Podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.